What's up, everyone? Good morning, and welcome to Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. Sean, man, it's only been 8 days since we watched the Chicago Bears play a game, but it really feels like it's been longer than that. It's been a long time since we watched the Bears play.
Yeah, this is a weird week because it feels like that game was a while ago, and we're waiting for a Monday night game this week. So it definitely feels like a long break, and I think it feels that way for the Bears too. I don't know how many of you guys saw the injury report yesterday. They had nothing, no
Yeah,
injuries to report. I don't think we see that too often in the NFL.
no, I mean, yeah, we're here going into week 7, and the Bears going into the Friday or their Friday practice completely healthy. We've heard a lot over the last week about the Bears self-evaluating, self-scouting. Clearly, some changes need to be made with the team at 2-4 and struggling mightily over the last few weeks, Sean. So, where do you think the Bears' focus has been this last week?
Well, yeah, it's certainly been focused on looking at what they can improve upon, what changes they could potentially make. We hear that in the things that Matt Eberflus has said over the past week, that's sort of the approach they're taking. He's been calling this the mini bye week, and the players had some extra days off in there. They returned to practice on Thursday. Um, one area where I'm kind of zeroed in on is the offensive line. Obviously, they have to show some improvement, particularly the interior in pass protection. They need to be better. Now, I'm also kind of thinking just in the approach that we've seen from both Ryan Poles and from Matt Eberflus, it wouldn't surprise me if some of these changes are subtle. I don't know if they're going to switch up who's playing where on the line. I think that's certainly on the table, but it's really hard to read into that when we're not actually seeing what they're doing in practice. We just get a little snippet at the beginning. Yesterday, Lucas Patrick and Sam Mustipher were snapping the football. It wouldn't surprise me to see Patrick back at center this week with the layoff. Lucas was hard on himself yesterday in interviews, saying that he wasn't playing to his standard, and I think that you see that on the tape when you go back and watch these games. Fans can notice that, and it's certain. The tape doesn't lie. Like, you're either playing well or you're not when you go back and look. And I think Lucas realizes that and knows that he needs to be better.
I think that's notable, though, because you mentioning the fact that Lucas Patrick was snapping balls during practice. I know that's not the first time, but has that been a pretty consistent thing every day, or is that something new?
Right when he got back, he started, or not right when he got back, but I mean, like, those first couple of weeks, we saw him snapping that one week. I forget which game that was leading into, and we were all kind of thinking he was going to be back at center, and then he wasn't. And then he kind of settled into those guard spots and wasn't snapping a whole lot. And again, this is just a 10 to 15-minute window. It's not like we're watching the whole practice, but um, then he comes out this week and that's the first thing he was doing. So I'm kind of leaning towards that might be a change that they're going to make. Now, the question becomes, what are you going to do at left guard then with Cody Whitehair out? You're either going to have to move somebody, or try somebody who hasn't been getting a lot of playing time. And I don't know that there's an easy answer for them at that spot if they move Lucas to center.
Before I toss our first question up on the board, if you're listening or watching this live, if you slide into the YouTube chat, you can ask us questions. We do appreciate it. Kind of helps guide the show. Of course, if you are watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. It helps everyone else kind of help the channel grow and find and find the channel. Also follow us on Twitter. You can find myself at Kyle Nabors. Find Sean on Twitter at Sean_Hammond. You can find all of our Bears content at shawlocal.com/Bears. You can also follow Bears_Insider on Twitter to keep up to date on any content that we post. Sean, you also keep your Instagram pretty much updated, right?
Yep.
What's the handle there?
Bears_reporter.
All
Yep.
right.
So follow me on Instagram there.
All right. With all the
I'm throwing up some behind the scenes looks that's from some of these practices, from videos and stuff on there. So check it out.
Nice. So yeah, with the propers out of the way, I want to throw up the first question from Rick, and it's kind of what we were talking about, and you already were alluded to, Sean, about any changes on the O line here that we're looking at. Before you start answering that, just to let you know, I'm going to slide over here. I left my coffee off to the side, and I can't make it
Gotta
through this
have that.
So as I slide off screen, go ahead and start diving into some of those
I'm going to
O-line
talk to
changes.
the disembodied head here as Kyle disappears from the camera. But yeah, O-line changes. I mean, the Cody Whitehair injury really, I think, complicates the matter because, and I wrote about this week at shawlocal.com. If Cody's going to be back he went on IR. That's a four week minimum absence. He's been through 2 games already where he's been out. If he's going to be back in just 2 weeks, then I don't necessarily think you need to go crazy making changes. Now, if he's going to be out an additional month after that, I think they got to make a move and switch things up here. And we're never going to get a straight answer about, how long Cody's going to be out. And we're not going to get a straight answer this week about what they actually plan to do on that offensive line. And it's hard to really read into that in practice, but I tend to lean towards they're going to do something. I think Cody's, a knee injury is pretty significant, and it would surprise me if he's back in 2 weeks.
So it's interesting because of the way IR rules changed a few years ago.
Yeah.
Where, if a guy went on IR prior to that, they were out for the year. It was clear it was a significant injury. But with teams able to put guys on short-term IR and they don't have to then answer questions about their status, it makes it a lot more difficult on the media's end trying to suss out, particularly if a team is being kind of cagey about player status. And the Bears have certainly been that way with any injuries, let alone when they don't have to report on. So we're kind of flying in the dark when it comes to Cody Whitehair right now.
We are, and there hasn't been, none of the national reporters have really put a timetable on that. We really don't know what that is, and it's certainly Eberflus hasn't put a timetable on it. If he's going to be back relatively soon, I don't think you need to change a lot because you're going to get him back at left guard, and you can move Lucas Patrick over to center. It's a relatively easy fix, and we haven't seen that starting 5 with Lucas at center. The starting 5 that we thought was going to be the starting 5 all summer. We haven't gotten to see that. But, if Cody's going to be out longer, I think you got to make a change because Sam Mustipher and Lucas Patrick in there together have been struggling. And, you can have one liability and you can sort of tape over it. But when you have 2 in there, it's really hard to tape over that.
And Tevin Jenkins has struggled a bit inside as well. At times he's been more consistent than the other 2, but it's been all 3 at different points.
Yeah, I think of the 3 interior guys, Tevin has done the best through these first 6 weeks, and he's playing a new position, so that's hard to do, and there's going to be mistakes, but you also see some of the upside in some of these blocks. You see them on Twitter, people posting them and whatever. There's sometimes where he just demolishes the guy coming at him, and you really see that potential, and you can see where he's trending at that position.
And the other thing, the difference between Tevin Jenkins and those other 2 guys, Lucas Patrick and Sam Mustipher too, is I understand this is a different regime. Ryan Poles didn't draft Tevin Jenkins, but Tevin Jenkins was a guy that was considered by a lot of people to be a first round pick that fell into the second round. And the upside potential is so much higher on a Tevin Jenkins than it was on a Sam Mustipher or Lucas Patrick, that I do think you'll see him have a much longer leash. The Bears want Tevin Jenkins to succeed. The other thing that to keep in mind here is while he's played fairly well, maybe fairly well strong, he's held his own for being a 5th round rookie in Braxton Jones. We did see him exposed quite a bit in that last game. And the other thing to talk about here, we've had a lot of questions over the weeks about Alex Leatherwood, where he stays or where he's at. Coming back out of this mini bye is really the first opportunity, I think, that the real possibility, the real chance that we see Alex Leatherwood return to the field and potentially slide into the starting lineup or at least start rotating in.
Yeah, that's, they brought him here because they think he has potential still, no matter what position you wind up playing him at. So I think he's going to be a part of the mix at some point this season. I wouldn't be surprised if he remains on, he's still technically on the non-football injury or non-football illness list, but he is back at practice just because last week was such a weird week and it was short and there wasn't really real practice. It wouldn't surprise me if he stays on that list one more week just to get a week of practice in this week where they were in pads yesterday and he can really get a feel for getting back in there because he did sit out a month. He was
Yeah.
sick, and that's you got to get the conditioning back up when you're not out there for
Particularly
a month.
I mean, we're talking about mono here is what
Yeah,
that
that's the
so
report. Yeah,
yeah, and I mean, I haven't personally been at Halas Hall, and I don't know even how noticeable it would be, but mono, just like I said, purely speculating here. But it's one of the things that does make you pretty weak. A lot of people lose a decent amount of weight when they have it. So when you're an NFL player, particularly on the offensive
alignment.
line,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it might take a little extra time. It's kind of hard to tell. And again, like the Bears aren't exactly forthcoming with that type of information, so it's kind of a feeling out situation here.
I think the interesting thing will be where do they play him
Yeah,
when they want to get him in the mix, because I think ideally you would play him at right tackle. I mean, that's sort of the ceiling. That's where you would kind of project him to be. But then, of course, that's going to depend how you're feeling about Larry Borum through the first handful of weeks here. And any move inside is going to take a little bit longer. I was going back through his Alabama stats. I don't think he played at left guard, maybe ever at Alabama, but certainly not a lot. So, if you're zeroing in on that position in particular, I don't know that he's going to be the answer there. Certainly not right away.
yeah. I mean, Larry Borum has been probably your most consistent offensive lineman outside of Cody Whitehair when he was healthy. So you're not moving Borum out of right tackle. He's a guy that is a second year player that's really kind of taken off and a diamond in the rough there where you feel set. I think the best chance is you're going to see Leatherwood play inside because he did struggle, I believe, at tackle with the Raiders last year. They had moved him around. It's one of those things. It's going to take a bit of time to one get his confidence back up and then find out what puts him in the best position to succeed. It's kind of the same thing with Tevin Jenkins, right? Where
Yeah.
you had a guy where you thought maybe tackle, maybe guard, and now you're trying to rebuild some confidence and get them and find exactly where that person fits in your scheme.
That's a really good point on Leatherwood too. I said earlier that tackle is his ceiling, but again, he struggled there last year, so he's not necessarily at that ceiling yet. So it'd be hard to look at the tape from last year and from the preseason and say, okay, yeah, let's move this guy into our right tackle spot.
Rick says, please don't tell me they would replace Jenkins. I don't think
I don't think so.
Yeah, Rick, I think the most likely scenario that we're going to see is that, and I'm not sure it's going to occur this week, as Sean kind of alluded to, but particularly if it doesn't occur this weekend, the interior of the offensive line struggles again. I do think you'll see Lucas Patrick slide back over to center and then Leatherwood in at left guard with Mustipher going to the bench.
That would make the most sense, even though Leatherwood hasn't played that spot a lot, because the only other option I would see would be to move Tevin to left guard and put Leatherwood at right guard. But you just spent all this time getting Tevin up to speed at right guard. I don't know that they would want to do that.
Yeah, then you're moving multiple people around. I think the best case scenario is to slot Leatherwood in at left guard. Another guy that a newcomer to the team that we haven't had a chance to see in the regular season, not because of an illness, but because due of an injury. We got a couple questions in here about him. Timothy Wire says, how much do you anticipate N'Keal Harry playing on Monday night against the Patriots, his former team, actually? So a little bit of a revenge narrative for this Monday night game.
Yeah, hopefully it goes better than the Amir Smith-Marset revenge game. That didn't work out. But, it's hard to get a read on. They were kind of talking like he was going to play last week, and then that didn't happen. I kind of think that, with the extra week that he might be able to get in there and play a decent amount. He's when you look back to what they were doing in training camp, they were using him differently. That I don't look at him in the same lens as I look at Velus Jones, a rookie who has really not played a whole lot of snaps on offense, because he's a rookie and N'Keal Harry's been around a bit, but also just the way they were using him in training camp is a little bit different. I thought N'Keal was a lot more involved with the offense in multiple ways, and I think that there's the potential for him and Justin Fields to develop some really good chemistry here. He looked good those first 2 weeks. I know it's 2 weeks in August, like that's a century ago at this point, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him out there a fair amount. And they need all the help they can get at that receiver position.
Yeah, Rick asked, how much playing time will Harry get Monday, and what is a reasonable expectation for him and his Bears debut and going forward? All right, so there's two parts to this question. Let's are two really separate issues here. How much playing time will Harry get Monday? I I think a fairly high snap count. Maybe I would
I
say
mean, I
probably
wouldn't.
40 to 50%, I would
Yeah,
guess.
something in that range. Half the game, maybe.
So one thing, Rick, I think the big thing with Harry and the best thing for the Bears in terms of Harry's skill set is his big body. Where I anticipate the Bears to use him a lot more in the red zone. That's an area that they've struggled so far. Darnell Mooney, for all of his upside, is not the best red zone target. Equanimous St. Brown, Dante Pettis, they're guys. I mean, and Kill Harry definitely has the highest upside there. Now, in Sean, I mean, that sounds about right. I think the bigger question might be like his long term usage.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta see him and see what he looks like out there. I do agree that he's gonna help you in the red zone, and when you can get him and Cole Kmet on the field at the same time down in the red zone, that gives you two big bodies and two guys that the defense has to figure out how to guard. The I going back to the original question and that first part of him in particular, especially with this Bears offense, I really feel like we do need to pump the brakes a little bit just because nobody has more than 10 catches outside of Darnell Mooney. So I'm not expecting N'Keal Harry to just come out here and have, 5 to 7 catches in his first game, because that's not really how this offense works. We haven't really seen that with anybody. Mooney finally got a decent amount of targets in that Washington game. But other than that, before that, it was slow going for all these guys.
Robbie, yeah, good morning, man. Good to see you in the chat. It has been slow going for the wide receivers. Rick's second part of the question was asking about what's a reasonable expectation in his Bears debut and going forward. I think we kind of hit on the debut part. Going forward, though, it's such a wide range of outcomes, I feel like, with Harry, because you're looking at a guy that was a former first round pick, and like all the measurables are there. Jailbreak had asked about isn't his biggest concern here, isn't his biggest concern with him drops. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely an issue. Now you can, like I said, the measurables, the former pedigree gives you hope. The thing that should concern you is Bill Belichick is really, really damn good at his job. And the fact that the Patriots felt okay with moving on from Harry, a former first round pick, when their wide receiver depth has not been very good over the last few years, that should be a concern. Like, that shows you that this is certainly a reclamation project. You shouldn't expect him to just come in here and dominate. Like I said, the potential's there, Sean, but it's going to take some time to figure out if this kid can play or not.
Yeah, anytime Belichick is letting somebody go, that should set off some alarm bells in your head. Like, what does he know about this guy that we don't? And obviously someone was going to take a chance on him, and I think the Bears were in a good position to do that. They need receivers, and he was relatively cheap. I am really excited and curious to see what he's going to look like once he's out there on the field with this Bears team, and certainly he's like you were saying, a really unique body. And Kyle, how about Bill Belichick this week talking about the Bears for 7 minutes?
That's what he does, man. Like, the guy just likes to ramble and fill some time with absolute nonsense, and then
He's running out the clock on his
yeah,
press conference.
yeah, he's the guy he's a smart guy. But anyway, so the Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast is sponsored by Marengo Guns. Marengo Guns, always buying, always paying top dollar for your guns, ammo, and military items. Come see the experts at Marengo Guns. Open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. Seeing Jailbreak in here. Kevin White made a play last night. Yeah, he did. There, that was it's one of those, I knew Kevin White was still bouncing around and was with the Saints, but like when you see the name pop up on the screen, and it still catches you off guard, Sean.
Yeah, how about that? It's nice, good for him to still be trying to make this NFL thing work, and B, making a play last night. That was nice to see.
That Robbie Ryan Pace smiled somewhere. Yeah, Ryan Pace down in Atlanta, smiling at that one. That was that the way that game started for the Saints last night, they also had a wide receiver catch a touchdown. I believe the first score of that game, or the first Saints points of that game. That it's pretty rare, particularly on offense, you find a guy I've never heard of, but he caught that touchdown, and I immediately had to look it up to find out who he was. I think it was from Weber State. Like, it was just completely random.
I'm gonna have to look that up. I missed that first score. I tuned in a little bit late.
Yeah, no, I literally like the announcer was, said the name, and I was like, who the hell is that?
The
Anyway.
Saints are all kind of banged up right now, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and then Andy Dalton just out there throwing pick sixes left and right.
Did you sorry, not to go on a tangent here about
No,
Thursday
no,
Night
go
Football,
ahead.
but did you catch that after halftime they did the goofy little sideline interview with the coach, and they asked him, oh, Andy Dalton threw 3 picks in that first half. What does he got to do better? And he started his answer with, just keep doing what you're doing. Like, wait a second. What?
I actually didn't see that when that game got to halftime. I said, okay, I've seen enough of this nonsense. It was just bad football, and I was like, I'm gonna go do something else with my time.
He gave some more context. He was like, oh, the throws were good. It was just bad breaks or whatever. But I'm like, in my head, I'm like, well, keep doing what you're doing. I don't know about that.
So going back to wide receivers, Rick had asked this question with the Panthers making a bunch of moves. Do you think there is a chance at DJ Moore or maybe one of the Jets wideouts, Mims or Elijah Moore? Let's start with the Panthers move because, last night, the breaking news with Christian McCaffrey going to the San Francisco 49ers and that huge deal, a lot of draft picks going back Carolina's way. I want to start there before we get the wide receiver because although this doesn't directly impact the Bears, there's not a lot of times in the NFL where you see a player of Christian McCaffrey's stature involved in a trade like this, Sean. What was your initial reaction to that last night?
My initial reaction was, I think that's a good fit. The 49ers are a good fit for him, and they're trying to win now. Trey Lance is hurt. That whole deal is over for this season at least. Why not go get and they've had a revolving door at running back over the last how many years? Why not go get a stud playmaker like Christian McCaffrey? I think that makes a lot of sense. I do think they paid a really heavy price.
They did.
That was a lot of picks, and I know you have strong feelings about investing in running backs, Kyle.
I do have strong feelings. The thing is, there are very few and far between where I think it's worth it. And I don't know if even Christian McCaffrey is worth the price that they paid on top of the contract. With that being said, that is the type of generational talent that can change the outcome of a season for you and potentially multiple seasons because he is that type of player. And the Niners are in their window. The thing that scares me with that trade is that the San Francisco 49ers potentially still don't have their quarterback situation figured out. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, they've made it to a Super Bowl with him. And listen, I mean, he's obviously good enough to get him there, but I think the questions persist. Trey Lance has been kind of a question mark. It did not go well to start this season with him taking over there. So it's not a desperation move, but it could potentially harm that franchise moving forward. Particularly, I mean, Christian McCaffrey, we've seen the injury issues with him in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's always hurt. I think Jailbreak just said that same thing in the comments just now. He's always hurt. And you know what? He's probably going to be hurt at some point this year. He might miss a game here or there. Hopefully nothing serious for him. But, he's a guy who's always getting banged up. And it's part of the usage rate is so high that he's bound to get banged up. Now, I don't think he's necessarily going to have to carry the load in San Francisco like he did in that Carolina offense the last couple of years when they really didn't have a whole lot of better options to work with. But yeah, you look at this long term and you don't really, if you're the 49ers, they don't really have you didn't figure out enough about Trey Lance to know. And you're basically starting the whole thing over again next offseason. And now you're throwing in Christian McCaffrey, who's he's relatively cheap this year, but then his cap number jumps up to 12 million next year. And for the next couple of years after that, it's an interesting move. I think it's definitely worth it for this year to go out and, you're in a winnable division. The Rams are off right now. They don't look like the Rams we saw last year. I think that the 49ers are well positioned to go out and win the NFC West. But yeah, then you're throwing in that contract for the next few years, and you kind of gotta. They got some other guys that they're going to have to pay too. So we'll see how that impacts the way they're building this team moving forward.
The NFC West maybe wasn't as vaunted as the AFC West coming into the season, but it's definitely been a disappointment. Yeah, the Rams, the offensive line issues have been pretty apparent with them. Matthew Stafford has regressed a little bit. The run game has been flat out bad. And
They've
that's
started like 10 different offensive linemen because of injuries. I mean, you can't win like that.
Yeah, so like that, the Rams have been bad. Arizona, I was not huge going into this season, and everything I thought of that team has been spot on. So yeah, it's a winnable division for the 49ers. But
and right now the 49ers, Rams, and Seahawks are all tied at 3-3 in the lead in that division. And I don't know if the Rams are going to get that figured out. There's some issues down there.
Yeah, I don't know if they are either.
What is your take on Allen Robinson this year? I'll be honest, I haven't watched them a ton, but I caught a couple of their games.
He seems to be coming on a little bit better than early. Early it looked like it could be a complete disaster. He's coming on a little bit. I don't know, that offense it doesn't look right. It's very odd what's going on there. Sean McVay is really good, but it's just not functioning the way we've seen it the last couple of years. So I do want to get back over to Rick's original question though, because he had said with the Panthers making the moves, any chance on DJ Moore? We discussed this a bit last week about DJ Moore. In terms of the contract he already has, I don't think the Bears are willing to put that type of money on the books right now with the way that they're operating, with the way Ryan Poles is operating. I think he'd rather use that money in free agency, and it could be spent on a wide receiver on a big term, a long-term contract for a big name free agent. I just don't think that the Bears are willing to trade draft capital to then already have a contract like DJ Moore's on the book, where you don't know if he's a number one receiver yet. Like, I like DJ Moore, but I don't think he's like this alpha number one where you want to put that contract on your books at this current stage of the rebuild.
His cap number next year is $25 million.
Yeah.
And in 24, in 24 and 25, it's just over 20 million. That is a huge contract. And that is kind of, it's going against everything we've seen from Ryan Poles. Now, yeah, you free up all that cap space for next year to use it. You're not just going to just let it sit there. But I don't know that giving up draft capital, you can still spend $20 million on a wide receiver and not give up draft capital in March. So I don't know that that's necessarily the move they would make. I think they're more likely to go after somebody who's a little bit cheaper and who you can get for a relatively cheaper price. And take a chance on and hope that they're going to outplay what they've been doing at their current team.
The other two names that Rick had put in there were the Jets wideouts in Elijah Moore and Denzel Mims. And just throw that back up just for a second here for everyone to see it. This is a difficult one for me because Rick going straight to my heart with two guys that I loved coming out of college, and Denzel Mims out of Baylor and Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss, Sean. God, I love both of these kids, and Rick had followed up here with Mims would not cost that much, maybe a 6. I don't even know if Denzel Mims going to cost you a 6 at this point. You might be able to get a 7 or have a 7th round or a conditional 7th round pick that becomes like a 5th or a 6th if he does well. I like both of those guys, Sean. Those are two guys that are on rookie deals. That they don't come with the contract of DJ Moore. They are both former, I believe Elijah Moore was a 1st round pick as well. I know Denzel Mims was, or maybe he wasn't. Damn, Elijah, things start to run together. But two guys that were high upside, highly thought of players coming
Elijah
out of college.
Was early second, 34th overall.
Okay, yeah, and maybe Denzel Mims was as well. Denzel Mims, let's see here.
He was 59th overall. Yeah, he was a second round.
Yeah, he fell. Yeah, he fell into the 2nd round. I thought of Mims as a 1st rounder, and that's why I always think 1st round. Fell into the 2nd round. I would be absolutely fine if you're looking at like I said, a conditional 7th rounder, maybe a 6th rounder. I do like the upside of those guys. I guess, Sean, I'll let you answer that first before I follow up with my second point there.
Yeah, I also lean towards throwing out a 7th round pick for Mims. I don't know. I think it's going to be a little bit I don't know that the Jets are as inclined to trade Elijah Moore. I don't know if you would agree with that, Kyle. I know he was in the news the last day saying that he wanted to be traded, but from what I've seen, it sounds like that's not necessarily where the Jets' heads are at.
Yeah, I don't know why they would really. Like at this point, I don't see a great reason for them to move them unless he's such like a clubhouse cancer that you feel that way. I'm trying to pull up the Jets depth chart
Well,
currently.
yeah, certainly the personality thing could play a factor in it. If he's unhappy and he's causing issues, in the building, then that sort of throws everything out the window.
They're such the Jets are such an interesting situation too because they spent those draft picks on Denzel Mims and Elijah Moore, but you also seen them then spend a first round draft pick on Garrett Wilson this year. They went out and signed Corey Davis a couple of years ago, so they have some depth at wide receiver. It's just like if you're a young team like the Jets and a rebuilding team, and it's shocking to see them in the position that they are right now. But if you're a rebuilding team like the Jets, you really want to give up on young wide receivers right now when you have a young quarterback and Zach Wilson and an emerging young talent and Brees Hall at running back. Like maybe that you have something, a core here that I don't know if you want to give those guys away quite yet.
And I think we mentioned this maybe on our last pod or a week or two ago. You're kind of looking at these guys are both sort of similar to what you have in N'Keal Harry, and you haven't gotten to see him on the field yet. He was your buy low guy back in July, who they got for a 7th round pick, and you still got to see what he is on the field. So maybe the Bears are feeling like they're set at that, not set, but they
Yeah,
have a guy already who fits that mold that they want to see.
yeah, definitely. So Mims would be an outside receiver. Elijah Moore would be more of a slot receiver. That would make a little more sense for the Bears. But I also don't know if you want to trade draft capital for a slot receiver. Like I feel like those are easier to find one in free agency, but definitely the draft with the way the college game has kind of evolved. You're seeing a lot of those kind of guys that can operate out of the slot, hybrid type wide receivers. So that probably hurts in terms of like Elijah Moore's trade value right now. Um, Anything else there, Sean, in terms of wide receivers?
Well, no, but I do. We're kind of getting into the weeds here on obviously the trade deadline is coming up in a couple of weeks. Where are you at with some of these guys on the Bears? Where are you at with, say, David Montgomery or Robert Quinn as potential trade chips going the other direction?
I pretty much anyone on the roster I would listen on, unless you think they're a part of your core 2 to 3 years down the road. Like Robert Quinn, you're certainly listening. I'm sure the Bears are. I don't know how far those trade, um, how far that's gone, but I'm sure the Bears are willing to listen on Robert Quinn. I'm not sure if they're actively shopping him or taking calls on him at this point. But he definitely would be up there. David Montgomery, I would think you'd be interested in moving. I don't know what type of trade value you're getting for David Montgomery at this point. Well, again, like teams don't make a lot of a big time trade for running backs. I said that right after the Christian McCaffrey trade, I realized, but that's a pretty rare trade to see happen in the NFL landscape. Outside of that, there's not a lot of name. I mean, could you see the Bears move Roquan Smith? Possibly, but I don't
Maybe.
expect. Yeah, Mike Johnson down here had asked a question: does Eddie Jackson have any trade value? Probably. He's certainly helped his trade value rebound. The question there is: do you think Eddie Jackson is a part of your core moving forward? And I don't know. And I think that's a fair question to have. That's a determination that the Bears need to make. I think the Bears probably think that Eddie Jackson is a part of their core moving forward, though, because it seems like they decided to start this rebuild in the secondary, Sean.
Yeah, I think so too, and that's maybe one of those spots where you're pretty optimistic with Eddie there, with Kyler and Jaquan Brisker at safety, and Jalen Johnson. I mean, I feel like you're feeling like if you're the Bears, you feel pretty good about that secondary, even though Kyler maybe took some lumps early in that Packers game, and you got some young guys who are going to make mistakes this year. But when you look at it big picture, long term, I think you're in a good spot there. The Roquan thing, you don't have to move him at this point. You can just franchise tag him. So I feel like the return has to be pretty good if you're going to move a guy like him. Now Robert Quinn, he's not really producing sacks. I know the metrics say that he's getting close to the quarterback a lot, but he's not. Much like 2020. The metrics look good, but the results just aren't there. And I feel like if you're the Bears, you might as well move on from that and get whatever draft pick you can in return and get that contract off the books and move on, because they're going to have to do something at that edge rusher spot, because it's pretty clear that they're not getting the pressure that they want to get when they're just rushing four guys.
Yeah, they're not getting enough pressure. Robert Quinn is certainly, I think, the most likely guy we see go. And then, as we had kind of mentioned, David Montgomery being in the last year of that contract does make a little more sense. Those other guys, Roquan Smith, Eddie Jackson, unless someone is knocking down the door and overpaying for them, I think that's the only way you see those guys moved. Sean, we're 35 minutes into this though, and we do want to wrap up here in the next 15 minutes or so. But we're 35 minutes, and despite the fact that there's been a lot of talk around Justin Fields this week, we haven't talked about it at all so far. So I do think that's a good spot to really to finish this up on. Where, I guess, having listened to Justin talk over the last week, having heard the Luke Getsy talk some more, Matt Eberflus following up this week, what sense do you get in terms of where Justin Fields is, both mentally and in terms of learning this system under Luke Getsy?
Yeah, I mean, just first with the frustration after the losses that have been kind of piling up, I'm not worried about that. I think Justin bounces back. He takes those losses hard, but he also bounces back well. I think he's the type of guy who the night after a loss, it's going to be eating at him and he's going to be frustrated. But we see in the way he approaches practice come Wednesday that it's behind him and he's not really thinking about those past games. And so I'm not worried about that. I don't think that the frustration is anything too much to be concerned about. Obviously he's got to play better and there's, they can do a better job of supporting him in the play calling, but at the same time, his receivers got to catch these passes and his offensive line has to be good. At this point, this offense has so many issues that it's making everyone look bad. And you can't just fix one thing. You can't just tell Justin to do this one thing and it's going to be better. I encourage our listeners to go look up Kurt Warner's YouTube page. He did like two videos this week breaking down Justin Fields, and I learned a lot watching those. They're kind of long. They come out to like 45 minutes when you put them together. But hearing a guy like Kurt Warner, a former MVP, talk about quarterbacking, you're bound to learn a lot. And this is, yes, the offense is bad, but Justin has to do better too. We talked earlier a couple of weeks ago or whatever about NFL Open, and I still feel like he's not trusting his receivers when it doesn't look like they're open, but the play is there. And obviously these things happen in the snap of a finger and it's really fast and hard to do. But he's got to be better.
Yeah, I mean, so Jailbreak, I have this up here. It says, I want to see progress. Some of these throws are all about timing. And that is, that's absolutely correct, Jailbreak. I mean, he has to be better in terms of trusting what his eyes are seeing. He's holding the ball too long. He's hesitating on plays that are there. They got to get that fixed. And that is a concern. Like that is, to me, that is the number one concern for Justin Fields moving forward. But that doesn't mean that it can't be fixed. Like we've talked about it a little bit before. You saw before poor Tua got hurt. I mean, Tua really struggled. Now, and to their credit, like the Dolphins went out and got additional talent to put around Tua, both on the offensive line and of course at the wide receiver position in terms of drafting Jalen Waddle and then making that trade for Tyreek Hill. I mean, you're talking two wide receivers right there that are much better than anything the Bears have, despite Darnell Mooney having a nice start. And I do wonder a little bit with Justin Fields is how much is it him hesitating and not reading things correctly, and what part of it or what percentage of it is him not trusting his receivers?
That's what's a little bit confounding and leads me to lean towards the second part of that, where it's not trusting the receivers, because you watch you watch the all 22, and sometimes you can see based on where his helmet is looking, you see he's looking at that first read and he doesn't pull the trigger, and a half a second later it's there. It's almost like he's not trusting them to be in the right spot at the right time, and the window is there. He's just not pulling the trigger, and then he winds up tucking the ball and running. That happens several times each game. So that's certainly an issue, and I don't know how much of that too is you're not trusting the receivers, you're not trusting the offensive line to give you more time. I don't know if that internal clock is just so sped up because of the issues on the offensive line. But I generally tend to think that he knows where he's supposed to go with the ball. I think it's more just processing what he's seeing after the snap and making those right decisions in the moment.
I think that's a good way to put it. Like he is processing, like he knows where the ball is supposed to go. He just has to trust those instincts. I do think that is going to come with time.
And it's hard to trust your receivers when
Yeah.
they have made some pretty bad drops.
Yeah. Mike saying Justin Fields is going to be fine. He is far and away the best quarterback the Bears have ever drafted. That's not exactly high praise, buddy. And he is growing into his role. The rest of the team needs to catch up to his talent. Yes and no, Mike. Like the talent is definitely there, and you are right. I like the ceiling for Justin Fields is higher than any quarterback the Bears have ever drafted, and that ceiling remains. And there are times you're like, "Holy crap! Wow, I see it." Right, but there are things that this isn't just a lack of talent around him. There are things that he controls, that the thing that we're discussing, that he himself has to improve on. And if he doesn't, it's going to be a struggle. Like if he doesn't start trusting receivers, doesn't start trusting his instincts, he can have all the talent in the world. It is going to cap his upside if he doesn't make that next jump.
And so I think when we take all this into account and you look at the 11-day layoff and what the Bears how they're approaching this, if I'm Luke Getsy, I'm telling Justin to just put a little trust in those receivers and pull the trigger on some of these throws. And not every time. You got to feel out the pocket. You got to know what's going on around you. And he does. I think he generally has a pretty good feel on that stuff. But just give your receivers a chance. And sure, they're going to drop some passes. But I think if you see him, like we said, you see him making the right read a lot of the time. He's just a little hesitant to pull the trigger. And I do think they could make some adjustments. They could roll him out more, but you're not going to be able to do that on every single play. Otherwise, it becomes a little bit too easy for the defense to know what you're going to do. But certainly, they can get him throwing from outside the pocket. I think that's where some of his best plays come. And we'll kind of have to see how they adjust these things as we come out of this layoff.
Yeah, Luke Getsy got to do everything he can to put Justin Fields in the best position he can to succeed. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but again, I mean, this goes back to, this is the irritation that I had with this franchise again, because they didn't put a quarterback that they invested in the best position to succeed, to find out what they had this year in terms of the talent around them. And that's why we end up having these discussions about, well, what exactly is the impetus, or how much of it is on Justin Fields, how much is on, and it's just so frustrating because it's just a franchise that continues to do this. Like, they never have things match up in terms of what ownership is doing with the front office, what front office is doing with its coaching staff, what the coaching staff is doing with its roster. It just
if you had one guy who could consistently catch those contested passes, those balls in traffic, where Justin could have a little trust and just pull the trigger on a throw and know that his guy is going to make a good effort on it, that would make things a whole lot easier for everybody in this offense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they didn't go out and get a guy like that.
Yeah.
And we don't need to beat a dead horse. We've been talking about that since March.
And we're going to be talking about that again. We're going to analyze Justin Fields' play come Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever we have a chance to jump back on here after that Monday night game and you're back from New England. We're going to spend half the podcast probably analyzing Justin Fields, whether it was good or bad. So we will hit on that more, of course. But let's go ahead and wrap it up with a quick look at that Bears-Patriots matchup. on Monday night. How do you think this game plays out?
I don't know, man. I think it's going to be another ugly one. I don't have a lot of confidence in the Bears to go in and pick up a win at New England on in a night game, primetime Monday night. They haven't beaten the Patriots in 2 decades. Bill Belichick is got their number or whatever. I know they don't play a whole lot. They've only played a handful of games in that span, but I'm kind of the report out there from ESPN was that Mac Jones is going to be ready to play this week. We don't know that for certain, but that's what it looks like. I'm kind of pessimistic on this one, no matter who's playing quarterback for the Patriots.
I don't know if Mac Jones playing quarterback really matters in the outcome
I
of this
don't know
game.
that it does. I mean, Bailey Zappies look good.
Bailey Zappies look good, and like to the point where I don't know if going back to Mac Jones is the right call. Like Bailey Zappi has played well enough that I feel like he's earned a bit more of a look, because I mean we saw a fairly large sample size of Mac Jones last year. It's not like he rode the bench, and while he certainly wasn't like, you're not writing him off as a bust, I don't think you saw a lot of upside out of Mac Jones. You have seen a bit of upside potential out of Bailey Zappi. I think that is worth looking into if I'm the Patriots and the future of your franchise. A lot of it comes down to figuring out that quarterback position right now. So, but anyway, that's kind of an aside. Outside of that, Bill Belichick, we know is going to have a good game plan for this Bears offense. I don't expect there to be a lot of points scored. I think the thing that really concerns me for this matchup is the Patriots are running the ball extremely well right now. Damian Harris will be back this week, but I think the Patriots have figured out that they've unlocked Ramondre Stevenson. And I think that's going to be it's going to be a tough 1-2 combo to stop for the Bears.
Yeah, the Bears interior has struggled against the run, and that's exactly where I would point towards too. I mean, if Damian Harris is back, Ramondre's been great, but then you got two really good guys. Then your second guy coming off the bench is looking pretty darn good too. And I think the Patriots don't have to make this very complicated. Just run the ball well, take care of the football. Bill Belichick always has a good plan defensively, and I think we're going to see that against this Bears offense. And I don't think this is a good matchup for the Bears.
So at the end of the day, Rick had said, "Can we stop their run? If not, it's going to be a long night." At the end of the day, if you're a Bears fan, this is how I think you should be approaching things over this last 2/3 of the season. The Bears defense is not going to get tremendously better, particularly in the front seven. They're going to struggle against the run probably all year. And I expect that to be the case against the Patriots. I think you want to see shootouts, essentially. Like, if the Bears are having trouble stopping the run, what you're hoping, I guess, to see is you want to see Justin Fields say, screw it, then I'm marching this team right back down the field and matching you point for point. The Bears haven't gotten to that stage, obviously, through their first 6 games. Ideally, though, you want to see the Bears losing games 27-24. Give up 250 yards on the ground. Justin Fields goes out and throws for 250 and runs for another 60 or so. And you'll feel much better about this team, I think. Right, Sean?
Sure. You want to see that, but I also think that is the last thing Matt Eberflus wants to see. Just knowing the way he approaches the game of football, they're not going to be trying to get into any shootouts.
Shootouts is not what I meant. But the Bears defense aren't going to be stopping a lot of people. The Bears are going to be needing.
You're going to have to put up points.
Yeah. So you might as well embrace that and hope that means Justin Fields starts slinging the ball a little bit more.
And we have seen him throw it more these last couple of games, which I think is a positive, a move in the right direction.
I'm going to quickly throw this up from Rick. Who will return punts, Pettis or Velus? I don't think Velus Jones is going to be allowed within 50 yards of any punts on Monday night. I just think that, at least for the time being, the Bears are done with that experiment.
I got my money on Pettis for punts, and I'm fine with keeping Velus on kick return. That's those two things are different animals, and he hasn't screwed up there yet.
Did Khalil Herbert return punts last year?
He was just kick return.
Just kick return. I couldn't remember. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's give some final thoughts before we get out of here, Sean. I know we're both picking the Patriots. What do you think this final score is going to look like?
Yeah, I do think it's going to be kind of ugly. I'm thinking 21-14 for the Patriots.
Yeah, I have it 23-17 Patriots. So that sounds about right. Hopefully, we'll see some progress out of this Bears offense, and mostly, I guess what I would say at the end of the day, just give me something to watch that's good, consistent. Like, don't give me that first half we saw a couple or in that Thursday night game. Just give me a full 60 minutes of competent football, and I'll be happy, Sean.
Yeah, I think most of America will be happy if that happens. We got another Bears primetime game. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you everyone who tuned in live and asked questions. It really helps us a lot. Again, make sure you stay tuned to ShawLocal.com. Follow Sean on Twitter at Sean_Hammond. You can follow myself on Twitter at Kyle Nabors, and you can find all of our content once again at ShawLocal.com. Follow Bears_underscore insider on Twitter as well. With that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Everyone enjoy this weekend of NFL football. We'll talk to you sometime next week after we figure out a date, but enjoy Monday Night Football. Bears, Patriots, here we go, guys.